The amount of data that social media sites collect via digital surveillance is astounding. Admittedly, some of this is made easy through users self-disclosing large amounts of personal information on their profile pages. Sites encourage users to publicly display information such as where they live, where they work, religious and political affiliations, and their marital status. And even if you choose not to fill out your profile, the site can trace your local IP address and related accounts to find out that information themselves. Beyond what we voluntarily give these companies, much of the data they gain comes from what we post and interact with on the site. Nearly all major social media sites utilize neural networks, a series of algorithms made to simulate human logic processes, which analyze every post made to the site. The algorithms log keywords in any text, such as brand names or symbols that could be associated with your identity. Some sites go even further to analyze any media in your post as well, identifying basic objects, sounds, or places that can be used to build a more detailed profile. It doesn't even have to be you. Acquaintances or friends can give away your info. By tagging you in a photo or post, or by granting the site access to their contacts, they can give your site a phone number and email. This can even lead to some sites like Facebook creating shadow profiles for you before you join the site, based on external data. Much of this is collected through hardware permissions the user may not have even realized they granted the site. Keeping it topical, the only social media mogul able to go round for round with mega media data mining overlords at Facebook is TikTok. TikTok collects your location approximately every 30 seconds if locations are activated, and for several versions, the site would index everything you posted to your clipboard. The kicker here is that this data doesn't just stay with them. Facebook has its partners that they data share with, and Twitter grants many organizations access to their fire hose, or the live feed of all public posts as they're made on the site. So, they have all this data on you. What do they do with it? The main answer isn't that glamorous. They advertise to you. A lot. Quick, how much does Facebook make off you if you're an American and spend an hour on the website? If you guessed B, you were correct. According to Who Targets Me, Facebook makes approximately 1 cent per minute American users spend on the site, so they make about 60 cents per hour you use the site. It doesn't sound like a profitable industry except for the absolute scale of it, as according to a 2019 study by the Pew Research Center, 69% of adult Americans claim to use the site regularly. Most of us expect this. It's a little jarring to hear it discussed in detail, but not tremendously shocking. What truly makes this collection nefarious is those buyers who aren't simply selling us ads. On the micro scale, just over the past summer, when protests erupted across the nation in the face of numerous instances of police brutality, official Twitter partner Dataminer tracked the locations and participants of these protests and distributed it to local police departments to assist in protecting the community. And on the macro scale, it has been known that Facebook's data was collected by Cambridge Analytica, who then used it to sell to the campaigns of Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, bolstering their election efforts. Facebook's targeted algorithms can also lead to an ideological echo chamber forming, which, if unchecked, can escalate into real-world violence. This can be seen in Myanmar, where anti-Rohingya Muslim propaganda spreads faster than Facebook can take it down, further fueling ethnic violence in the country. The problem with mass surveillance on internet platforms is the power differential. TikTok, Facebook, etc. know tons of stuff about you and have complete control and access to all activities on your account. This power can be used to silence marginalized groups, such as when some suspicious content creators reverse-engineered YouTube's ad revenue flagging bot to uncover that YouTube had been overwhelmingly content flagging queer creators, despite parading the platform as a bastion for self-expression and acceptance. The level of data mining and analyzing done by social media sites to their users is rather frightening, to be frank. Any reference towards your stances on politics, religion, and sexuality are noted by algorithms and are used to create a more in-depth profile to sell to a third party. We know that companies such as Clearview AI, Hawk Analytics, and Dataminer collect massive amounts of metadata and sell it to police and government bodies. The amount of information at the state's disposal can be evoked at any time to create a state of exception and punish subjects arbitrarily. This isn't to sound paranoia-inducing, but how long is it until your entire social media history is combed through and documented by somebody for their own purposes and used for who knows what? We can already observe that the potential is being there and being actualized upon by the state.
racializing surveillance for me was a way to really understand like the business end of surveillance, like what are its outcomes. And I say that it's a technology, and I mean it's a set of social practices that make use of certain techniques to reify the social order. So to keep things going, to see surveillance as an operating system for our social order. But when you kind of like augment it to understand how race is operating, we can think of like things like the techniques of the census, the border, biometric technologies, policing, redlining, all of the kind of negative or the business end really of surveillance technology. And there was one case that took place at one of the distribution centers in New Jersey, where a worker there, Christopher Smalls, a Black man, organized and worked with collectively a walkout. And the response to that from the company, which was revealed through a leaked document, was to use all of these types of stereotypes around Blackness to say that he, and Black men in particular, to say that he was inarticulate. And so they tried to produce a disinformation campaign to discredit his organizing. And you can see how things like, how surveillance operated there by what was revealed through the leaked document, but also the way that a kind of keen insight of the way that, I guess a keen insight of how these tactics can be used to discredit someone, to say that they're not smart, that they're, they don't have the capacity to organize for labor rights. And I think that's some of the ways that I try to, look to think about surveillance, in my work. Last summer was such an interesting time of uprisings of COVID, and it gives you a moment to look at, for example, around Juneteenth, or maybe earlier in June, when many corporations, many brands, many influencers had, had statements for Juneteenth, but also earlier, like these kind of blackout squares as a kind of solidarity move, with the protesters. And, for some, what it did is made all the Instagram feed or the social media feed just black squares. And in that way, redacting, important information that could have gotten out regarding how to support people who are, in the streets, on the front lines, protesting. But it was also, those things were branding opportunities, for companies. And for example, you had the same Amazon that was, having these campaigns to discredit their organizers, and to kind of boost up themselves. We've all heard the stories of people having to like urinate in bags, people having, on the shop floor, on the work floor, people having, repetitive stress injuries, back injuries, can't get sick pay or time off. You had, for example, Brooks Brothers, which has a history in clothing in people who are enslaved, but the company has never really, gotten to or really delved into publicly, at least their involvement in the slave trade. Whether that was, producing clothes, using cotton from enslaved labor, or producing clothes for enslaved laborers to wear. And so when they did this Juneteenth statement, or I think it was the Black Square, but they had to, what they did is the day after, because of, one of the ways that people kind of critique these things is in the comment section about why aren't you talking about your history? And so the following day, they posted a kind of apology letter, but a not apology letter. It was kind of like, if our company was ever involved in that, we're really sorry. And the records are there. Researchers have tried to get into their archive to find out about these things, but it's not only just Brooks Brothers. We're talking about, banking, insurance companies, all of these that basically, built themselves on the marketing of enslaved labor, and to this moment, there are many of these kinds of, whether it's apologies, it's definitely not reparations for a lot of these companies, but it's been kind of like and lacking. And so I think that is, a really interesting way to think about that it's not only just to think about celebrity and linking to these corporations, but that I guess what's undergirded by all of that is that these corporations have not really taken any type of atonement, responsibility, apology, or reparations for the continued damage and profiting that they do. Yeah, so Kate Crawford has a new book called Atlas AI, which really gets into the business of extraction, whether it is labor extraction, the extraction of data, the idea of like affect, like who's angry, who's risky, who's mad, and also the extraction of rare earth minerals and other things that are that could be easily depleted. Lithium, for example, when we think of Tesla cars. And so that's what really is of interest to me. The kinds of labor that happens with the people that do waste work in sites like, the Philippines, China, Africa. I mean, waste work is really the kind of like dismantling of old computers, old electronics. There's no artificial intelligence without the business that gets it done, the computers, the undersea cables, the large energy that's being used by, data processing centers. And so those are things that I think we need to continue to think about, is the politics of extraction and what we need to do collectively to have a certain responsibility, to the earth in which we're living in.